Hey there everybody, and thanks for joining us for another session of iGETIT Live. Today we're going to be taking a look at SOLIDWORKS FeatureWorks, which is an add-in in SOLIDWORKS that allows you to convert non-native model data into native SOLIDWORKS features. I'm James Keller. I'm an instructional designer and certified SOLIDWORKS subject matter expert here at iGETIT. And what is FeatureWorks? So as I said, it's an add-in that allows you to basically import non-native SOLIDWORKS model data and create individual features that can then be edited and add to modify that model data and build upon it. Some of the benefits, of course, are the ability to work with non-native models in SOLIDWORKS and actually create features and have them work in a parametric capacity. You can convert step, iGES, parasolids, and other non-native formats using FeatureWorks. It's really simple to use as well. So automatic recognition mode is going to be what we're looking at today, and we're going to look at two different modalities of automatic recognition. So you'll get to see two different methods of that approach today. And in addition to creating features, SOLIDWORKS will also create the sketches that build those features. And of course, you can also dimension those sketches. So with one quick and easy tool, you can take a non-native format and kind of make it an almost fully defined model that's completely parametric if you want. What we're going to be learning specifically today are how features are recognized, which is kind of important just for understanding how FeatureWorks actually works, and will allow you to do interactive feature recognition in addition to automatic recognition if you want, even though we're just going to be looking at automatic today. So in order to break down a model, deconstruct it, SOLIDWORKS kind of works in reverse order to recognize features opposite from how you would typically build them. So it's going to recognize things like fillets and chamfers first, and then do primary boss extrudes last. We're going to look at 3D interconnect settings and breaking file links. As I said, we're going to look at two different types of automatic recognition. The first is fully automatic recognition, which is basically the out-of-the-box, all the features checked, and allows SOLIDWORKS to kind of like go at its own rate and produce features as it thinks is necessary. And then we're also going to look at the guided automatic recognition, which is still automatic. It's not interactive recognition. But this just allows you to kind of like guide the automatic recognition of features to build in some design intent and make sure features are recognized on an imported model as you would hope they are. So let's go ahead and get started. Got SOLIDWORKS open here. So first things first, let's go ahead and make sure the FeatureWorks add-in is active. So from the main menu bar up here, I'll just go in the options drop down and select add-ins and just ensure that FeatureWorks is checked. I have it checked to start up, so it'll happen every time I start SOLIDWORKS. Go ahead and click OK. Now let's go ahead and open our non-native format. Just a regular open function, no import function needed, and I like to have the all files file type toggled there just so I can see everything available to me. We're going to be working with this iGES file, so I'll double click it, and the first thing SOLIDWORKS wants to do is run Import Diagnostics on the part, which is a good standard operating procedure. So I'll go ahead and click yes, and we can see that it finds some faulty faces, but it's also unable to make any changes because we did not unlink the part like I mentioned earlier. So I'll go ahead and click cancel, and then I will right click the option here in the tree, the top level, and choose break link. And yes, I do want to confirm that. And now we have a nice imported body to work with. You can see how the icon changed there. Now right click and do Import Diagnostics, and we can see that we have all those same faulty faces, but now I'm actually able to heal all. So let's go ahead and attempt that. Let's just attempt to heal all. And SOLIDWORKS is able to repair all of those. So we'll just say OK. All right. Now I can begin feature recognition by starting in recognize features here in the data migration tab, or by right-clicking the body in the feature tree and choosing the FeatureWorks drop-down here, recognize features. But I do want to show you the other method first for unlinking files. So that was the instance example. So you could do that for each instance that you open, or we'll go ahead and close this without saving. You can just go ahead and turn off the option in general. So if you deselect Enable 3D Interconnect, and then we'll go back and open our bracket 2 IGES by double clicking. Now when I run diagnostics, we can see that I don't get that error message anymore. And in fact, it's only found one faulty face, so it's a little bit more robust. I'll go ahead and attempt to heal all, and it does. So diagnostics was successful. And now it prompts me to start FeatureWorks. So do I want to proceed with feature recognition? Yes. So as I said, we'll start with the fully automatic mode, which is basically keeping all these features checked. We're going to be doing standard features for automatic mode here, not sheet metal features, but standard features. And I will just go ahead and click Next to go to the intermediate step and try to recognize all the features if possible. And we can see here the recognized features include all SOLIDWORKS features and no unrecognized geometry. So it did recognize everything in this part. We have fillet to start off with. Not only did it recognize the fillet, but it combined the two similar fillets, which is what we want. We've got a chamfer in the back. That's recognized. We also got a rib here. Successful. I'd say recognize 3 different holes successfully, even though these 2 holes are similar. And then we've got a revolve feature here for this little protrusion off the back. And then 2 extrudes for the rest of the geometry. So I'd say this is pretty successful. I'm going to go ahead and click OK to have SOLIDWORKS build that part. And you can see, once it goes through the motions, that now we have feature geometry instead of an imported body. I'll go ahead and hide this plane just to make things look a little bit simpler. So all this is now editable. I can go in here and edit this feature and change its definitions if I wanted, just like any of these other features. May not be exactly how I'd build it apart if I were building it from scratch, but it's definitely now a workable SOLIDWORKS part and working parametrically. We can see, though, that a few things may be subpar. We've got undefined sketches here for pretty much every feature. So we might want to go in and add dimensions, which we can do automatically too in another instance here. I'll show you that later on down the road. And also some things like some of the planes that it creates are editable, but in some cases some planes aren't editable. So you can see here that this plane isn't editable. And in that case, you know, if you want that plane to be editable in the future, you can always go and insert a reference plane to replace that plane, and then you just want to make sure that whatever feature is referenced to that plane is changed. So you could say create a new plane, then go in and do edit sketch plane and point it towards the new plane that you created in this instance. We won't do that here, but it's just for example. So that's one limitation to fully automatic recognition. Another is, you know, maybe it's going to give you features, but they may not work, you know, as you expect them to. So, for example, if I double click on this boss extrude here, and maybe I want to make the extrude 12 millimeters instead of 10. When I update that, that's going to give me a funky behavior and an error. So I didn't really want that. Let's go ahead and undo that. Well, let's see what happens if I try a different one. We got an offset distance and a thickness difference. I mean, that's not how I'd build this. If I try the offset difference, let's see what it gives me. See, now it's just obscuring that revolved boss that was there. So, you know, maybe there's a better way. I'll go ahead and undo that. Maybe there's a better way to have FeatureWorks kind of recognize this part. Maybe we should go ahead and look at the more guided approach. So let's go ahead and close this without saving any changes. And we've got our imported body still here up. And first, let's go ahead and right-click, and we'll go and look at some of the FeatureWorks options. So when you right-click an imported body, you have the FeatureWorks drop-down here available. And here's the options dialog. So just a few options. In general, we can either choose to create a new file or overwrite the existing file. You can see that how I closed out the new file that it created without saving, and so now here we're back to the original imported. You know, it's still a SolidWorks file, but it's just an imported body for the file. This isn't, you know, the actual iGEST file. This is still a SolidWorks part file. It just doesn't have feature geometry. So you could choose to say overwrite this and not even have this imported file after you do FeatureWorks, but I like to create a new file. Here's the dimensions and relations options. I think we will go ahead and toggle this for the next option to see what we can add. We can choose different schemes and placements for those. Not a big deal. We can also choose to add constraints to the sketch. So add sketch relations to the sketch, which is another critical you know, portion of fully defining a sketch. So that's an awesome option to have. We'll go ahead and check out the next set with the resize tool. So this is kind of like basically if you feel like you want to reorder the way SolidWorks recognizes features, you can change that option here. I like the out-of-the-box order. It makes sense to me, so I'm just going to kind of keep everything here as defined. And then in advanced controls, you know, nothing fancy here. This allows you to create a feature even if it's a little failed, which is great because then you can kind of like problem solve why it failed and continue moving forward. You can also choose to perform a body difference check to see if what SolidWorks creates with FeatureWorks is different in any way from the imported body. Some performance options here to make things run a little bit smoother. Here's a nice option for holes. Sometimes you don't really want to do hole wizard holes. And if you remember in our prior example that all three holes were recognized as hole wizard holes. So you could uncheck this to maybe just recognize them as standard holes, or there are other options as we move forward to show you how to do them as just like extruded cuts. So again, we have combination options here. So we did see that those fillets were combined into one feature in the prior example, and then we have other combination options here. So this is basically the FeatureWorks options in a nutshell. I'll go ahead and click OK to apply our changes. And then let's go ahead and run FeatureWorks. So instead of right-clicking and selecting Recognize Features from this menu, I think I'll go ahead and do it from our Data Migration tab. One's just as good as the other. So earlier we did automatic mode, still standard features, but we just kind of had everything checked and let SolidWorks do its thing. So this time we're going to do a more directed approach. So we're going to start from the bottom and work our way up. So I'll go ahead and unselect everything there, and we'll just see if SolidWorks can recognize any ribs in this part. So we'll go ahead and just select ribs to start off with, and then we'll click Next to go to the intermediate step. Now, as expected, we did find the one rib. I can highlight it there. You can see that, yes, we did find a rib. And the unrecognized body option is going to be everything that hasn't been recognized as a SolidWorks feature up to this point, which is basically called the working model, maybe a familiar term for you. So we can see that if I select this, it's basically everything except for the rib. And you can see that just selecting that removes the rib from the geometry. All right, so let's go ahead and click back to look at the next thing. Just click OK. It's going to save that recognition. It already recognized the rib, so clicking back won't unrecognize that rib. I can move on to the next set of selections. So I'm going to deselect ribs, and now let's check for fillets and chamfers. And we'll click next. And you can see that we still have the rib there, but now it's also went and found that fillet like it did before, and the chamfer on the back side, right? Which is expected. It's exactly what I wanted it to do. And we still have that much unrecognized body left, but we can see when I select unrecognized body, it starts to show us everything that hasn't been selected. So let's keep on stepping back to add. We did fillets and chamfers. Now let's do holes. Now I know that last time it found all 3 holes in this model, but this time I really just want to treat these 2 holes as a whole. So I'm going to do a local recognition option here and just select that face as a local recognition entity. So it only looks at the holes associated with this face. And then I'll click next to see what happens. And we can see, yep, we've recognized 1 and 2 holes. Okay. And I want to take it a step further, actually, because these are 2 similar holes. Keeping them as individual features is fine, but I think because this part is symmetric, it's symmetric down, let's see here, the right plane. I think I want to go ahead and try to find a pattern, and we're going to do a mirror pattern. And we'll call this hole the seed feature, and we'll try to call this hole the mirror feature. And when we click next, we can see that FeatureWorks finds 1 mirror. And when I click OK, it has updated the recognized features to include 1 hole and now 1 mirror feature. And that mirror is an instance of that hole. So I think this is exactly how I want it to be. So I'll just step back and continue recognizing more features. All right, so you can see how the model is kind of deconstructing as we go along, hence working from the bottom up. So basically what we have left are extruded geometry, maybe some revolves. So let's go ahead and check both of those. Let's do a revolve and extrude and see what SOLIDWORKS finds. Okay, so it has now found the rest of the geometry, and it's basically decided to call this a cut extrude, which is what I wanted instead of making it a whole geometry. And then we've created this as a boss extrude. Earlier in that model before, it made it a revolve. This time it chose to make an extrude. I like that option. But if I wanted to, I could always go re-recognize down here, and with that feature selected, I could choose to do a boss revolve. Right? And then I could click re-recognize, and maybe it'll recognize it, maybe it won't. In this case, it didn't. But obviously, it has the ability to recognize it as different features, which you can kind of try to work through and see if one works better for you. But this is actually the result I want. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And we can see similarly that SOLIDWORKS builds the part. And also you can see how it's creating sketch geometry as it goes. Okay. And we end up with a really similar part as we did before. With the plane here, some extra geometry. I'm going to go ahead and hide our plane again. This plane is editable, and that's the only reference plane that's been created. Everything else looks to be a nice normal feature. You can see that we've got our 10 mil hole there that was created on one side and then mirrored on the other. And we can step through and see that not all, but some of our sketches are fully defined, whereas none of our sketches were fully defined before. So let's go ahead and run through and just see how quick we can make this, a nice editable, fully defined part. So in this case, let's go ahead and edit our sketch, and we'll look normal to it. And I think what we're missing here is just some references to the existing faces. So if I click these 2 points and make them horizontal, and then these 2 points and make them vertical, now we quickly have a fully defined sketch. Let's exit that. All right, that's done. Looks like we got a sketch location here. And I can see that this sketch location has been created before this fillet, which kind of defines where this hole should be. So if I were to test this theory, maybe I go in and try to change this base to be larger. And yep, as I expected, those holes don't follow that geometry. And that's the design intent I'd like. I'd like those holes to follow and stay concentric to this fillet curve here. So let's go ahead and undo that. And then I'll just move my fillet from the feature tree here to be before my hole diameter, or the whole feature. So now I can go in and edit this sketch and make this point concentric to that arc, which makes it fully defined. And now when I go in and change my extrude depth, we can see that that now behaves as expected. So you can see with just a little bit of modification, I can start to build in some design intent to this model and have it work just as I expected to moving forward. Last thing we have here, might as well finish that up and go in. I bet you this guy just isn't correctly related to the origin here. And if I try to, say, move it, or maybe move here, yep, that looks like it. So I'm just going to go in and make a midpoint coincident or relation between that line and the origin. And there we go. We have a fully defined parametric model built from imported non-native geometry that I can fully edit and build upon to continue working on this design. So in a nutshell, that's the power of FeatureWorks. FeatureWorks has a lot more capabilities. It can do interactive feature recognition, which is a more directed approach, which allows you to do more complex features like shells and other things. It can work with unrecognized volumes of all types and even sheet metal parts. So we're developing a FeatureWorks course right now for iGETIT, and we'll keep everybody posted on its release date, and hopefully you guys will come and check it out. Appreciate you joining us today for this session, and if you have any questions on what we showed you today, I'm happy to answer anything I can.